I'm Carol Costello. Thank you so much for joining me. Saudi Arabia is building a wall, a ginormous wall. Look at the plans. It's 600 miles long. There's more than one person in America who finds this rather ironic. The Saudis, they say, are responsible for the rise of terrorist extremists, and now they're building a wall to keep them out. Critics say the Saudis indoctrinate children with hatred, fund terrorists, yet enjoy the friendship of Western allies. Senator Richard Burr summed it up.
You have to quit funding terrorism. You have to quit teaching this to your youth. We've got to make sure that we're after the same future that they are.
Senator Burr went on to say if Saudi Arabia is not willing to truly help them, there ought to be some type of ramification. With me to talk about this, CNN Global Affairs analyst Bobby Ghosh and Terry Strada. She lost her husband in the 9/11 terror attacks. Welcome to you both. Bobby, I think the Daily Beast put it best, and I'm going to read you an excerpt from one of their articles. The Daily Beast says, "Intolerance is Saudi Arabia's greatest export. The country's highest religious authority called to burn down all churches in Arabia. Saudi textbooks call Jews the descendants of apes and pigs. Christians are forbidden from wearing crosses. Building churches or bringing in Bibles. How does the world react? Total surrender and utter appeasement. Diplomats pay lip service to human rights while tens of billions of dollars in arms are shipped to the kingdom of hate." Do you agree, or is that too strong?
No, it's not too strong, and nor is it particularly new, but it's very rare to hear a senior American politician like Senator Burr actually come out and say what he has. Most American politicians are very equivocal when they talk about Saudi Arabia. There's too much bowing and scraping, and yes, they are the world's largest producers of oil, but they are the world's largest exporters of this hateful ideology, and they use the wealth from the oil to make that export possible. They reach out to poor communities around the world, poor Muslim communities. They send preachers out preaching this doctrine of Wahhabi or Salafi Islam, in which everybody who does not agree with their particular interpretation, and that includes all Muslims who don't agree with their particular interpretation, is an apostate or deserves the worst kinds of punishment.
Terry, you've been fighting to get the administration to declassify 28 pages of the 9/11 report. You believe it will prove that the Saudis funded the 9/11 terrorists that attacked our country. Do you believe the Saudis have a hand in the extremism that's happening today?
Absolutely, yes. I do believe they have a hand in all of what's happening in the world today, the reign of terror that we're witnessing around the world. Back when 9/11 happened, the question was, did these actors act alone? Did Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda act alone? We were told there were no state sponsors of the attack of 9/11, and that is simply not true. Yes, Saudi Arabia funds terrorism, and I was very happy to see Senator Burr come out and say that we need to start to take a closer look at the funding of terrorism. That's what we've been saying all along. And in these 28 pages, as we've been told over and over again, it points a strong finger to Saudi Arabia and the role they played in funding the 9/11 attacks. Not just in funding them, but in putting in place in our country and around the world, operatives and cells, these sleeper cells that were in our country back before 9/11 that brought the 19 hijackers to our country. We have no reason to believe they have been taken down, that they don't still exist today, and that we do need to take a much harder look and stance on terrorism funding.
Bobby, something else I want to bring up. Saudi Arabia beheaded 10 people in the last 2 weeks. They're determined to flog and flog again Raif Badawi, who was sentenced to 10 years in jail and 1,000 lashes for launching a website that suggested a peaceful discussion about religion. 8 U.S. lawmakers sent a letter to Saudi officials. I'll read part of it. Quote, "At a time the world is wrestling with violence in the name of religious intolerance, such examples of state-sanctioned violence helps legitimize the extremist view that violence is a justified response." Do you think that this is a tipping point, or will America continue to depend on Saudi Arabia's friendship?
Well, it's not just America; it's the world. Even Saudi Arabia's contribution is a big reason why oil prices are so low. That they've kept their production output very high instead of cutting it back in response. And even though the United States is becoming more and more self-sufficient in oil, there are large economies around the world: China, India, Europe, Africa, that depend very heavily on Saudi oil or depend on Saudi to keep the price of oil down. So Saudi Arabia is both a easy target. It's easy to criticize when a country has rules about public flogging or public beheading. It's an easy target. At the same time, it's impossible to really sanction against them because they're so critical to the economies of much of the world.
That must frustrate the heck out of you, Terry.
Frustrates me, yes, and I don't agree with it completely. I think there are things we can do. Right now, besides releasing the 28 pages, we have legislation that we're trying to enact, JASTA, the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act. American citizens should have the right to hold accountable in a U.S. court of law those that were behind the attacks, those that give the financial aid, that give the logistical support. So there are things that we can do. Citizens can go to www.28pages.org. They can go onto this website and they can call their congressman, they can call their senator, they can say, please